Glass audio diffusers? All right. I love new questions. And this one comes from Sarang in Mumbai, a great city that I have been to. And what a great place, great country. Sarang writes, I am making arrangements in view of possible sound deadening and/or diffusion for my room. For the attractive design purposes, I'm planning to custom make semicircular and quadratic diffusers using glass, which can be easily blended into a general room theme. And I read somewhere that glass makes a bad reflective surface and produces reflections which are harsh in the upper mids and high frequencies. Is it okay to use them, or should I go with traditional wooden materials? Well, first off, I am certainly no expert in diffusion and sound absorption materials, but let's talk about that for just a minute, because I've been right in the middle of writing this book, The Audiophile's Guide, the stereo, which I've talked about a few times, and you probably get sick of me hearing about it, but eventually it'll publish, and then I'll be able to say, hey, buy my book. And in there we cover a lot about diffusers and absorbers, and I'll teach you how absorbers work. I don't know how many of you know, like a big pillow or a sound deadening absorber, even a big blanket. I mean, when you talk through or sound enters into wool or any of these big absorptive materials, what's happening is the audio pressure waves, which are very specific. I mean, obviously, as I'm talking, you have these waves coming out in very specific patterns so that you'll hear my voice. When those enter into wool and things like that, they scatter and rub against it. It kind of takes the specificity out of it, and it scatters it and converts it to heat. Okay? So the friction of the air molecules rubbing against this stuff converts it to heat, and we get deadening at some frequencies. Diffusers work differently. Diffusers work by scattering the sound and then reflecting the scattered, more disorganized sound back at the listener, and our ear tends to ignore things that aren't as specific as the frontal wave coming. And so diffusers work without absorbing too much, because one of the things you don't want to do in a room is make it too dead. If you absorb too much in a room, then it becomes very dead, and that's a bad situation for a great sounding stereo system. What you want is where your voice sounds very natural, which is a combination of reflective and absorptive. So when I walk into my home, we don't have a very echoey home. If I walk into my garage, I can hear it's kind of echoey, right? Because there's a cement floor, there's walls, and if there's no cars in the garage, it sounds very echoey. Walk into my living room, you don't get that same thing. Why? Well, because there's a combination of reflective surfaces from the floor, the ceiling, and the walls, plus there's absorptive materials inside, like our couch and our, whatever we got, that either break up or absorb sound waves. Now, what is it Sarang? Yeah, what Sarang is trying to do is build a cool-looking diffuser. So typically diffusers, well, they can be in any number of shapes, but diffusers are generally, like the wooden kind, are slats that they have varying depths of slats that come out. You've seen them before. Look up RPG diffuser, and that's the ones I use at work. But there's plenty of different kinds of diffusers. And generally, they are just reflective surfaces, usually made out of wood, plastic, glass. I don't think from a reflective standpoint it's going to make a hill of beans of difference. They're all going to reflect well, but there is something you do want to watch, and we'll talk about that. So, in fact, here's another way to look at a diffuser. Varying depths along a wall of something that is reflective. So one of the things that I did years ago is I built bookcases that were built into the walls at the point of first reflection, something that I'll teach you about in the book. And in the rear, which is the front wall behind the speakers. And then I went down to the thrift store and I got all kinds of books, and they were all at different levels, right? And those make great diffusers because if you pack them in tightly enough, and they're not too, leather bound. You find mostly hardcore smut novels and romance stuff at the store. That's what people get rid of, right? Encyclopedias, all that kind of stuff. And they're all at all varying depths. So that makes for a great diffuser. The problem that sarong is going to have is that glass vibrates. Glass is, hear that? This is a glass tabletop. And as a reflective surface, it's fine, but you don't want that thing singing at some frequency. So when you build this, just make a point behind it of putting putty, something, tar, something to deaden the glass so that it doesn't sing sympathetically with certain frequencies, because then you will get a howl and a glassy glare to it. Just deaden the glass, and then its reflective surface won't be any worse or better than wood or plastic or glass. Okay? All right. Thanks. Good question. I'll talk to you tomorrow.